Good morning, everyone. I am Noriel Bendanillo, and today I will discuss about CA200 Institutional Corrections Module 2. So today I will discuss about the history, the philosophy, and development of imprisonment, as well as the development of the prisons like the Sing Sing prison, Auburn prison, Pennsylvania prison, and also the age of enlightenment. And I will discuss also about the different forms of punishment like retribution, capital punishment, and so on. And lastly, I will discuss about the different personalities behind the development of prison system like Cesar Beccaria, Cesar Lombroso, Clifford Shaw, Enrico Ferre, Voltaire, and so on. So the first prison was the Sing Sing prison. So the picture you can see is the Sing Sing prison. Sing Sing prison is used to for inmates like alcohol and substance abuse treatment programs, and also for anger management programs like rehabilitation ang Sing Sing prisons for the inmates. They have also an educational and vocation programs and family development programs, guidance and counseling services, and library and library services and recreational programs. So kani siya, ang Sing Sing prison is used to rehabilitate and treat inmates. So Sing Sing prison, or in full name is Sing Sing Correctional Facility, is a maximum security prison located at Ossining, New York. So gigamit man ni siya since 1826. So siya ang pinaka-oldest penal institution in the United States, and the Sing Sing prison is well known siya for the harsh conditions in the 19th and 28th century. So when we say harsh, so ang condition sa inmates is very difficult. Sing Sing prison has a facility of 800 cells, but ang population siya nag-grow siya in the mid-19th century. Previous niya is 4-story building, pero nahimo siya na 6-story buildings because of nakadaghan na ang inmates. So ang original na Sing Sing prison of 800 facility cells, nahimo siyang 1,000 facility cells. So ang mga convicts hanang moadto sila sa Sing Sing prison, magsakay sila og barko, muna itawag siya og up the river. So the Sing Sing prison was notorious for its harsh treatment towards the incarcerated prison. So ang pagtreated sa mga inmates sa Sing Sing prison is very inhumane. So gipatrabaho siya dito of more than 8 hours dayon. Magtrabaho siya sa minings, and dapat dili sila magsaba. Silent ra kayo ang mga prisoner. So the common punishment in the Sing Sing prisons are whooping and flogging. So ang whooping and flogging is ang mga inmates every time na violate sila sa rules is bunalan sila og latigo. So it is very painful, and fortunately ang inani na punishment is na-abolish siya sa New York legislation noong 1848. As you can see in the picture, ang inmate is ipaliguan siya og bucket of water. So ang Sing Sing prison is well known siya for pinapaliguan nila yung mga inmates. So, yan, a bucket of water. Sing Sing prison was known for its executions. So, ang ilang form of execution is the electric chair. So, although it was developed by neighboring Auburn, so its execution were carried out until 1963, and the infamous death chair was later moved to Green Haven Prison. So, mo ni siya ang electric chair sa Sing Sing Prison. Next is the Auburn Prison System. So, muna siya ang Auburn Prison System. Ang Auburn Prison System is located at the Auburn, New York, opened in 1816. So, it is established for a disciplinary and administrative system based on the silence, corporal punishment, and congregate or group labor. So in architecture and routine, Auburn became a model for prison throughout the United States. So ang ilang form of disciplinary action is by group siya din silence and hanang group na magtrabaho sila during the day. So ang ilang sanina katong white din na stripe na black. So mo to yung mga Auburn prisoner. So ang Auburn State Prison was originally used congregate cells, but in 1821, Warden William Britton borrowed the concept of Pennsylvania concept of solitary cells. So it means that ang previous niya is congregate cells. It means group siya na prison, pero gimodified siya into a solitary prison. It means na each inmate has its own cell or room. So ang every cell has a unique design of a five-tiered cell block of 2 rows of single cells placed back to back in the center of the building. So ang cells are measured only by 3.5 feet or 1.6 meters wide ang kalaparon and 7.5 feet or 2.3 meters long and 7 feet or 2.1 meters in height. So it means gamay ra kay siya ang room for the cell of each prisoner. So the door face outer walls lined with grated windows that provided indirect light and air. So it means that for me, solitary confinement is difficult kay you cannot interact with other prisoners. So, na siya big impact on the psychological health of the prisoner. So, this pattern of small inside cell block was later adopted by the most state prisons in the United States, whereas the Pennsylvania system inmates did the handicraft works in their cells, while Auburn prisoners are labored in congregate workshops, offsetting imprisonment caused by fulfilling private industry contracts, a hidden passageway with a small openings, and visitors are surreptitiously monitor the inmates. So, in other words, na-adapt na ang solitary confinement from the Auburn State prisons. While the difference between Pennsylvania and the Auburn State prisons is that ang Pennsylvania is nag-work siya from to a handicraft work only inside their solitary confinement, while in the Auburn State Prison is nagtrabaho sila outside the cell in congregate in group. Nagtrabaho sila sa mga industry, mga buildings, mines, inana. So next is the Pennsylvania Prison. So this is the Pennsylvania as you can see in the picture. So the Pennsylvania prison is a penal method based on the principle that solitary confinement fosters penitence and encourages reformation. So the idea was advocated by the Philadelphia Society of Alleviating the Miseries of Public Prisons, whose most active members were the Quakers. So in 1829, the Eastern State Penitentiary on the Cherry Hill in the Philadelphia applied the so-called separate philosophy. The Pennsylvania prison, where the prisoners were kept in a solitary confinement, it means individual cells. So ang iyang size sa cell is 16 feet height, nearly 12 feet long, and 7.5 feet wide or 4.9 by 3.7 by by 2.3 meters. So, sa Pennsylvania prison is also contain exercise yards were completely enclosed to prevent contacts among prisoners, was attached to its cell, and the prisoners saw that no one except the institution officers and an occasional visitors. Solitary penitence, however, was soon modified to include the performance work such as shoemaking or weaving. So mas there is more Pennsylvania prison is more advanced than in Auburn prison. Because why? So in solitary confinement of Pennsylvania prison, is much larger than the Auburn prison. So, and also, nana siya modification, nana siya exercise yards where the prisoners can exercise to become physically fit. And also in each cell, nana sila trabaho like shoemaking and weaving. So, as you can see in the picture, this is the Pennsylvania prison. So, ang iyang walls is mura siyang stone, na siya'y bed, and na siya'y hole sa taas. So, that is the Pennsylvania prison. So, na siya'y material sa sulod. The Pennsylvania system spread until the predominated in European prison. Critics in the United States argued that it was too costly and had a deleterious effects in the minds of the prisoner. The Pennsylvania system was suspended in the United States by the Auburn system. So one of the disadvantage manggod aning Pennsylvania prison is much costly. So it means na mahal siya kay solitary confinement man niya. Each of the prisoner had its own cells. So, diri na punta siya different types of criminal punishment. So, kung makakomita og crime, na siya equivalent na punishment. So, what are these punishment? So, number 1 is the incapacitation. What is incapacitation? So, incapacitation seeks to prevent crime by physically moving the criminals away from the society. This punishment can be traced back to ancient times. Terence Smith and Hong Lu write a punishment, a comparative historical perspective. Banishment was common penalty in antiquity. Later, it was common for colonizing European countries to ship convicts and undesirable overseas. In modern times, house arrest, incarceration, and death penalty are all forms of incapacitation. So, nga to pa, ang incapacitation is if ang criminal is ang tao makakommit siya og criminals kay ipabanish siya or ibalin siya sa laing place para dili na siya makakommit ani na place of crime. So, for example, ani is sa unang panahon kung makakommit og crime is ilang i-transfer to other country through ship through ship para wala na yung mahitabo na crime sa ilang country mismo. So that is the incapacitation. So incapacitation in modern times mo na lang ni is a modern arrest, bali na sa laing place inana. The next form of criminal punishment is the deterrence. So, what is deterrence? So, the goal of the deterrence is to persuade citizens and possible offenders or re-offenders to conform to the rules of the law. So, Smith and Lu explain that there are four types of deterrence that are generally recognized. So, number 1 is the specific deterrence that analyzes how effective the punishment is on individuals' future behavior. Second is the general deterrence that seeks to understand how the individual's punishment can deter other forms of committing crime. Next is the marginal deterrence that seeks to reconcile on how the effective different types of punishment as are either specific or general deterrence. And fourth is the partial deterrence refers to the situation in which the threat of penalty is in some deterrent value when someone engages illegal behavior. So, ang deterrence is para mo conform ang mga individual into abiding the law is through punishment. So, in this theory that kung mas heavy ang punishment, mas mo confirm ang tao sa law. So, for example, ang deterrent is capital punishment. Ang mga tao is they are afraid to commit a crime because they are afraid to the capital punishment or the death penalty. So, mauna siya. So, the next form of criminal punishment is the retribution. So, the modern examples of retribution include the widespread practices of imposing fines as well as enforcing mandatory sentencing policies for certain offense under the law. As an effective punishment, retribution has been criticized as it is an overly rigid and limited in its capacity to change societal behavior. However, it remains popular. So, ang retribution, ang concept ani is that, for example, if I committed a crime to another person, that another person will take revenge on me. So, that is the concept of retribution. Of what kind of offense na akong na-commit niya is that ang iyang i-revenge na ko is mo po na siya yung i-revenge na ko ang unsa ako na-commit niya. So, that is the concept of the retribution. Is the rehabilitation. So, what is rehabilitation? Rehabilitation focuses on helping the criminals and prisoners overcome the barriers that lead them to committing criminal acts. So, it includes developing occupational skills as well as resolving psychological issues such as drug addiction, aggression, explains the American Psychological Association. So, rehabilitation is not technically a criminal punishment. Its goal is to help the prisoner to become a law-abiding citizen again by rehabilitating them. So, the ultimate purpose of rehabilitation is to transition offenders back into the society. The American Psychological Association reports that in examining massive data, individualized approaches on crime, complemented with the community-based approaches, can prove effective in reducing offender recidivism. So according to the APA, ang rehabilitation has a positive impact on the crime into the criminality. Maybe it reduced the crime rate. Next is the restoration. So what is restoration? Restoration is a radically different approach to criminal punishment. So ang goal daw sa restoration is para daw ang offender is magbago siya sa iyang nahimong offense and to the society for the crime that he had committed. Although a relatively new practice in modern times, the concept of restorative justice can be found in the earlier legal system of Western Europe, the ancient Hebrew justice in the pre-African society. During the process of the restoration, the victim initiate a process in which they both and the offenders meet to share feelings and concern. The dialogue offers the victim the opportunity to be heard and the offender to make amendments to receive forgiveness. Restorative justice is often used in crimes involving youth offenders. So, ang restoration is that ang offender is mangayo siya og amendments sa tawo nga iyang nakomit sa crime, mga siya og amendments nganong mag-share siya ang feelings nganong nakomit niya ang crime inato. So my last topic is all about the personalities behind correctional institutions. So our number 1 is Cesar Vicaria. So who is Cesar Vicaria? Cesar Bunisana Marquis de Vicaria was born on March 15, 1738 in Milan, Italy, and he died unfortunately on November 28, 1794, and also in Milan, Italy. He is an Italian criminologist and economist whose De Delicti Delphine, or the Crimes and Punishment, was celebrated volume of the reform of criminal justice. So the father of criminal justice pala is si Cesar Vicaria. Vicaria was the son of a Milanese aristocrat of modest means. So Vicaria himself dated his discovery of the Enlightenment in 1761, when he began to read the works of the French and Scottish philosophies and discussed them in a circle of young friends led by Pietro Verri. In all the provinces of the Austrian Empire, including Milan, absolutist reforms emanating from Vienna continued to encounter entrenched resistance from noble and equitable corporation and from the juridical culture of the ancient regime. On the Crimes and Punishment combines the elements of the social contract theory of utilitarian positions. It touches on many aspects of law and justice in a rapid, impassioned style and completely abjuring legal technicalities. So, Vicaria sought in all cases to minimize or abolish the use of violence in infliction of pain. He argued against the use of torture in gathering of evidence, highlighting its absurdity, and against the death penalty, emphasizing its failure to deter. So, ang contributions ni Vicaria sa koan is ni appeal siya to minimize or to abolish the use of violence sa prisoner and also the torture kay it's very inhuman and also the death penalty because ang iyang outcome is failure. Dili siya makadeter og crime. So muna siya ni appeal siya para i-abolish to. So ang next is Cesar Lombroso. So Cesar Vicaria is father of modern justice system. Si Lombroso is the father of modern criminology. So mo ni siya bungot. So who is Cesar Lombroso? He is described as the father of modern criminology. Cesar Lombroso, the theory of born criminal or atavistic dominated thinking about criminal behavior in the 19th to 20th century. Lombroso was born on November 6, 1835 and died on October 19, 1909. And he was the founder of the Italian school of positivist criminology. He rejected the established of classical school, which held the crime was a characteristic trait of human nature and the rational choices were the foundation of behavior. So in the classical theory is on Cesar Vicaria. So ang classical school manggod siya is nagbelieve siya ang tao na nay free will. Pero kaning positivist nag-apply sila og scientific explanation on the criminality like the born criminals or atavistic. So ang born criminals, they believe that the size of the skull, the shape of their face, will determine most likely that person will commit a crime. So as you can see, Lombroso used a scientific approach and concept drawn from physiognomy, early eugenics, psychiatry, and social Darwinism argued that criminality was inherited, and the born criminal could be identified by physical defects, which is confirmed as criminal or savage or atavistic. Ang for example sa ang born criminals man god is kuan siya nature sa tao, like nature versus nurture. Ang example sa book of the born criminals is the Kalikax and Jokes family. So ang book ani nag-explain siya that crime daw is inherited daw through our parents, our ancestors. Next is William the Conqueror. So mo ni siya si William the Conqueror. So unsay contributions ni William Conqueror? Ang iyang contributions is that he made himself the mightiest noble in France and changed the course of England history by the conquest of that country. So ang iyang major contributions is that when he conquered the England, 9 major changes sa England. So that's all of contributions of William the Conqueror. Next is Enrico Ferre. So this is Enrico Ferre. So who was him? Ferre was born in Lombardy in 1856 and he worked as a lecturer and later as a professor of criminal law, having spent time as a student of Cesar Lombroso. While Lombroso researched anthropological criminology, Ferre focused more on the social and economic influences on criminal and crime rates. So ang difference between Lombroso and Enrico Ferre. So si Enrico Ferre was a student of Cesar Lombroso. Si Cesar Lombroso is nag-focus siya sa physical characteristics of a person in relation to the criminality. And kay Enrico Ferre was different. Ang iya is he studied the social and economic influences on criminal and criminal rate. So different sila. Ferre's research led to him postulating theories calling for crime prevention methods to be ministry of law enforcement, as opposed to the punishment of criminals after their crime had taken place. He became a founder of the positivist school and researched psychological and social positivism and opposed to the biological positivism of Lombroso. Si Ferre is, ang theory niya is prevention rather than punishing. So, ang iya is proactive na siya. Dili na siya maghulat nga ang tao makakommit pa ang crime, but to prevent from person to commit a crime. So, ang iya is more on psychological and social rather than positivism of Lombroso. And finally, Clifford Shaw. So, who is he? He was born on 1895 and died on 1957. Clifford Shaw was an American sociologist and criminologist. He was a major figure in the Chicago School of Sociology during the 1930s and the 1940s. So, ang iyang partner, si Mackay, and the work on the span 3 general areas is the studying of geographic variation of the rates of juvenile delinquency, the study of autobiographical works by delinquencies, and the development of Chicago Area Project and the delinquency prevention program in the Chicago area. The two studies that published by Shaw and Mackay in the 1930s and 1940s were still held in high regard among social scientists in 1970. So, ayang major contributions is that nag-study siya sa mga children in conflict with the law or delinquencies in the Chicago school. So, that is all my topic, ma'am. Thank you very much.